Hi, this is Diana from DivineFractal.com. Do you know what the freeze response is? You've probably heard about the fight or flight response, but did you know there's actually a third possibility? Freeze? Today, let's learn about the freeze response in Trauma and the Freeze Response, Good, Bad, or Both by Leon Setzer, PhD. Have you ever been so paralyzed by fear that you simply disassociated from it all? Almost everyone is familiar with the fight or flight response, your reaction to a stimulus perceived as an imminent threat to your survival. However, less well known is the fight, flight, freeze response, which adds a crucial dimension to how you're likely to react when the situation confronting you overwhelms your coping capabilities and leaves you paralyzed in fear. Here in brief is how the survival-oriented acute stress response operates. Accurately or not, if you assess the immediately menacing force as something you potentially have the power to defeat, you go into fight mode. In such instances, the hormones released by your sympathetic nervous system, especially adrenaline, prime you to do battle and hopefully triumph over the hostile entity. Conversely, if you view the antagonistic force as too powerful to overcome, your impulse is to outrun it, and the faster the better. And this, of course, is the flight response, also linked to the instantaneous ramping up of your emergency biochemical supplies, so that ideally you can escape from this adversarial power, whether it be human, animal, or some calamity of nature. So where, in what you perceive as a dire threat, is the totally disabling freeze response? By default, this reaction refers to a situation in which you've concluded in a matter of seconds, if not milliseconds, that you can neither defeat the frighteningly dangerous opponent confronting you, nor safely bolt from it. And ironically, this self-paralyzing response can in the moment be just as adaptive as either valiantly fighting the enemy or more cautiously fleeing from it. Consider situations in which realistically there's no way you can defend yourself. You have neither the hormone-assisted strength to respond aggressively to the inimical force or the anxiety-driven speed to free yourself from it. You feel utterly helpless. Neither fight nor flight is viable, and there's no one on the scene to rescue you. Say you're attacked by a ferocious dog who's sunk his teeth into your neck and you're totally at his mercy, or a child suddenly finding yourself captive to a vicious bully who's pulled you to the ground and is pummeling you with all his might, or a victim of a sexual predator who's overpowered you and literally taken custody of your body, or maybe you're trapped by a fast-moving natural disaster rendering you completely helpless, like an avalanche, earthquake, hurricane, tsunami, etc. Or finally, because of your age or highly suggestible state of mind, maybe just imagining that your mortal welfare is at risk and that you're helpless to do anything about it. In such alarming instances, you'd experience trepidation, panic, horror, dread, and these extreme feelings would be so fraught with anxiety, so laden with terror, that almost no one is gifted with the resources required to stay fully in the present, which is precisely what's needed to process to emotional and physical completion or release what so frighteningly besieges you. Under such unnerving circumstances, freezing up or numbing out, in a word, disassociating from the here and now is about the only, and in various instances, best thing you can do. Being physically, mentally, and emotionally immobilized by your consternation permits you not to feel the harrowing enormity of what's happening to you, which in your hyper-aroused state might threaten your very sanity. In such instances, some of the chemicals, i.e. endorphins, you thereby secrete function as an anesthetic, so the pain of any injury to your body or psyche is experienced with far less intensity. Additionally, if you're not putting up a fight, the person or animal aggressing against you just might lose interest in continuing their attack. But whatever the provocation, if you can't make the assailant disappear, you're much better off disappearing yourself by blocking out what's much too scary to take in. So in its own way, the freeze response to trauma, if only at the time, quite as adaptive as the fight-flight response. Keep in mind that if you're a small child, your development capacity to protect yourself is markedly limited. So rationally or not, you're likely to experience a whole host of situations as threatening to your survival. Merely a look of rejection or scorn in the eyes of a disapproving parent, for instance, can make you feel so uncared for, so unloved and abandoned, that you may feel compelled to numb yourself out. And this is why the freeze response occurs far more commonly in children than in adults. Once you grow up, though, and your size, strength, and cognitive development and emotional resources far transcend what you possessed as a child, your capability of dealing with ominous forces is far greater than it was earlier, when you felt profoundly more vulnerable. And herein lies the dilemma of your original freeze response. That is, such paralyzing psychological phenomena as phobias, panic attacks, obsessive-compulsive behaviors, and various anxiety states can frequently be understood as symptoms of a freeze response that never had a chance to let go or thaw out once the original experience was over. And many features of post-traumatic stress disorder directly relate to this kind of unrectified trauma. Though it's almost always entirely unconscious, some circumstance in the here and now can remind you of a trauma suffered years, sometimes many, many years ago. Never fully discharged, the original fear or panic linked to that memory compels you to react to the current day trigger as though what happened in the past is right now happening all over again. And so your original reaction of self-paralysis, however mystifying it might be to you and to those around you, can't help but repeat itself. Your mind goes completely blank, your rational faculties missing in action. This is why what was adaptive as a child, that is, disassociating from an event vastly beyond your capacity to handle, can become so frustratingly maladaptive as an adult. Paradoxically, at its extreme, a reaction of disassociation could be not at all life-preserving, but in fact life-threatening. For when you're stymied by inappropriate, exaggerated fear, you're in no position to act sensibly to whatever might be menacing you. It's been postulated that disassociating in the midst of a traumatic experience is the foremost predictor for developing PTSD symptoms later on. And, as already pointed out, young children are particularly disposed to disassociate during episodes of trauma. So, for instance, a child who froze during incidents of frighteningly family abuse is, as an adult, especially susceptible to experience the freezing reaction again. And sometimes the current stimulus for such re-traumatization isn't anything specific. It may simply emanate from being in a state of highly exacerbated stress, which itself serves as an unconscious reminder of the acute stress linked to the initial trauma. So if any of the above descriptions describe you or someone you care about, I can hardly overemphasize how useful it might be to seek professional help. That way you can finally put it to rest, what at the time of its first occurrence you weren't able to. Though, combining psychology with basic principles of biophysics, what a large variety of trauma resolution methods make possible, i.e., sensory motor processing, EMDR, and somatic experiencing, etc., is the opportunity to release the residual tension or internal energy that was left unresolved even after the actual trauma was over. Finally, many chronic stress-related diseases are now postulated by trauma experts as representing somatic manifestations of past unrectified trauma. It may therefore be invaluable to find a qualified practitioner to assist you in locating just where in your body this frozen energy still resides, and then help you at long last to discharge it. Now, if you find this post instructive and you think others might as well, please consider passing it on. This Dr. Leon Setzer also has other articles in Psychology Today online. And personally, I would actually recommend that you check out a book called the body keeps the score, which is fantastic for helping you heal from PTSD. Thank you for exploring Freeze, the little-known trauma response with me today. Do you have any questions, comments about the freeze response? Please let us know below. And if you find value in this video, please tap the like and subscribe button. This is Diana from DivineFractal.com. Until next time, remember, be fearless, fill your heart with love, and create art. Love you guys.